This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you so much for tuning into the program. It's Friday, January the 9th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. David Williams producing the Come On With It edition. So, if you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial to get in the queue and on the air is 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. So I don't necessarily believe in coincidences, but in that vein, just yesterday afternoon, I went to one of my buddy's house, and he's a big Boston Bruins fan, and he's got this shadow box with a number 4 Bobby Orr jersey in it. It's beautiful. And then I come in this morning, I open up the normal websites that I do in the morning, and the first thing that pops up at me is, in 1979, on this date, Bobby Orr's number 4 jersey retired by the Boston Bruins. In the same envelope. Yesterday afternoon, someone sent me an email about the show and said, you know, it's too bad some people don't pick up on some of the sports stuff. Look, I only do it just to ease myself into the program. I know some people enjoy sports. Of course they do. And they said, you know, how about a debate about the best hockey player ever? If everyone always said it was Wayne Gretzky, is it now Connor McDavid? Then I open up the same website and I see on this date in 1998, the Hockey News selects Wayne Gretzky as the best NHL player ever. It's a weird little world, isn't it? And for my money, if anyone cares, Mario Lemieux is the best player I've ever seen. Maybe Connor McDavid now. He's certainly approaching that status, but anywho. And in the world of Olympic hockey, so I saw a video yesterday, an update about the status of progress in building the Olympic hockey rink in Italy to accommodate the Olympics. It's going to be done, but not fully done. They're barely going to be able to hold the games in this rink. I mean, what is going on? They knew the Olympics were coming to town for an awful long time. The Olympics are only a few weeks away, and here we are. The rink's not ready. Bizarre stuff. All right, more important stuff. So we hear a lot about the state of the roadways. We can add in the 24/7 snow clearing and the sluggish hiring of enough operators to expand, as the government has talked about, the 24/7 on the 14 chosen most busy routes. Okay. Then we've got some update. I read this on CBC this morning. An update about the cost of road construction projects. It's nearly doubled in the last 6 years. So this is coming from the Department of Transportation and Works, and this is a presentation back in October. The average cost per kilometre for paving projects, excluding the TCH, has risen from approximately $330,000 in 2019 to over $610,000 in 2025. Overall paving investments rose 93% between 2019-20 and the current fiscal year. Annual road plans budget grew from $166 million a year to $320 million a year. Basically, the takeaway here for me is that unless there's a whopping big increase in the paving or road construction budget into the future, we'll simply see fewer kilometres done or addressed or repaved or built. It's a wild scene because there's 12,000 plus kilometres of roadway in this particular province that is paved. So with those extraordinary costs, of course, there's lots of inputs. And then there's a static supply of contractors, but it's pretty much going to spell out to be fewer kilometres. Because $320 million, I remember back when the road budget was somewhere around $90 million. And then, of course, into the 2019-2020 fiscal year, $166 million, now $320 million. And we're getting fewer kilometres out of that amount of money. So it's an interesting story, and it will indeed only see the cost rise into the future. There's no reason to believe they're coming back to earth. So I thought that was an interesting story. And then you add to it is the government's decision to move away from a private-public partnership, a P3, for the twinning of the highway, the two sections that will be now divided highways. The question I would have, and look, I think that it's really questionable, all the P3 operations we've entertained here in this province, but in this world, given the fact it was announced, and there's a $300 million tender, the private sector companies that have been working on competing for that road work, the money that they've spent, is there going to be some request for reimbursement given that the government itself changed its tune? Like, is that how it's going to work? Because I know full well, in that industry, they have been preparing for what is a very lucrative contract. But now, with the change in tune, what's that going to mean into the future? Your thoughts? All right. Never know exactly what's going to dominate my email inbox overnight, but when I woke up this morning and I logged on for the first time, oh boy, crab rebate day yesterday. All right. So the auditors at Deloitte finished their analysis and they determined that the crab rebate, the final amount, will be calculated to be 28 cents for the total price of $5.25 a pound. The number of harvesters in the email inbox is overwhelming and they are furious. So is the union. So we heard from Dwan Street on the VOCM Morning Show this morning. So they talk about transparency rules and what have you, but here's some of the quotes directly from the union itself. The provincial government has let this behaviour go on for far too long, and that's in relationship to the processing sector. The provincial government has let this behaviour go on far too long, and in the past, our union has shown compliance when it should have shown force. Mark my words, that it's not a decision that will be accepted. That's from the President, Dwan Street. This from Secretary Treasurer Jamie Baker. Over $100 million has been stolen from our coastal communities and local economy. Nothing about this result is fair or acceptable, and it's time for our new provincial government to take the swift action needed to address the root of the issue, which is corporate control and transparency in the fish prices. We cannot allow this decision to turn harvesters against one another. It is pretty wild. Dwan Street is appealing to the members to direct their frustration to the companies who have put you in this situation. So I'm not in the industry. I'll follow along as best possible. And I knew full well, like I heard some numbers being floated around, and the 28 cents is far less than the union was expecting in this final analysis by Deloitte, but whew, if my email inbox is any indication, this is far from over. And some of those furious fishers are also, I was going to say thank me, they're also pleased that we continue to talk about the Atlantic Fisheries Fund. It's important. It has been a lot of money flowing for a lot of good innovation and technological advances, and there's no money in the most recent federal budget. And you don't need the history lesson on it, but it was once $400 million for this province alone. Then, lo and behold, it was reimagined. It was $400 million for the entire Atlantic Canada fishers. And now, with the money set to run out this year, no new money has been added. So that's a concern for many, obviously so. All right. I heard the banging about this on the campaign, provincially speaking, about the possibility for some local service districts to merge and to create the first new municipality in this province in the past 6 years. So this out on the Port Peninsula. Tony Wakeham, the Premier, of course, he said he would allow Mainland and Three Rock Cove to join together, incorporated as a municipality. But insofar as information or further information or next steps, no real straight answer on why it has not happened. This is a note coming from the Minister of Municipal and Community Affairs, Chris Tibbs, talking about the budget, whether or not it's adequate. So on December 4th, Tibbs said the report concluded that the municipality would be financially sustainable, but the government analysis determined there's a lack of certain information that could impact this conclusion. So where are we in next steps? You know, it's one of those things, isn't it? And regardless of party, and maybe regardless of country, the campaign promises are really easy to make. Campaigning is difficult enough, but when compared to governance, campaigning is a cakewalk. So it is a little bit eerie, the silence from government on so many big files. And look, I know people keep telling me, haven't get a chance to get settled and understand their portfolios and up and down the line. But I don't think the province has much more time to wait. So all of the big files and all the big discussions that are happening, it would be nice to get some public input from the province itself, updates on some of the status or the progress of a variety of things that we'd be talking about here on the program. But for those folks out in, whether it be Mainland or Three Rock Cove, happy to have you on the show if you'd like to express whatever questions or concerns that you have. Remember when there was a big move or conversation regarding regionalization? In some corners, it became a very dirty word. The conversation got off to a rocky start when, for instance, at municipalities Newfoundland and Labrador, they only represent incorporated municipalities. So when they started their working groups, it did not include some local service districts, or didn't include any local service districts, which consequently made LSD residents and leadership feel like they were on the outside looking in. And consequently, because of that, there was very little traction in the conversation. Eventually, the politics got outweighed by the policy, and they just moved away from it, shelved it. No more regionalization talk. Just in my own personal opinion, easy enough for a bloody townie to say it, but it was a mistake. inevitably into the future, there is going to need to be more and more cooperation and collaboration amongst smaller communities for every reason imaginable. It's ongoing now. It's going to increase into the future. So as opposed to, no one pretended there was a one-size-fits-all for all smaller communities to cooperate into the future, regionalization, whatever you want to call it, but it's going to be mandatory. It's going to be unavoidable. So we could have put some sort of structures in place to include every voice from incorporated municipalities, local service districts, to come up with plans that could be implemented over time. No real rush to say your community no longer exists. Your heritage, your culture, your familial attachment with the community is gone forever, because that's not the case. We're just talking about the pragmatic operations and collaboration into the future. Community sizes are dwindling. We all talk about the age of the population here in this province, and that has a distinct impact on rural and remote parts of the province. It's just reality. No one's suggesting, certainly not me, emptying out the bay and all that stuff you hear people say, because it's nonsense. But this type of regional approach is going to be more and more important into the future, but we didn't have the good sense to continue on to try to forge the plans, address the questions, bring the LSDs into the fold, make it a meaningful conversation, and now look where we are. Anyway, you want to take it on? Let's go. All right. I just mentioned Port to Port. Again, sometimes I get stuck on issues in my head and consistently looking for more and more information and explanations and answers, but I can't get the John Risley Wynne proposal out of my head. What's most interesting about that for me is that it was so much money and such lofty plans that we haven't heard a single peep from the other wind proponents about whether or not they're on board. Because Risley on the 150 turbines on the Port of Port Peninsula can't generate enough power for phase one. Not my words, his words. So all the other proponents, where are they? Where's the provincial government on any of this stuff? It'd be nice to see if this is simply one man's voice in the wilderness, or whether or not there's other people there that are on side and think there's a possibility to get something of this magnitude and scope off the ground, because at this moment it feels like a one-man game. But anyway, your thoughts. All right, and speaking of that particular play, one of the partners is Pattern Energy. Of course, they have a proposal out on the Port of Argentia. Big story for the Port of Argentia. They had huge plans to expand port and dock facilities. They've kind of come up against the financial wall, given the fact all the monies they were banking on in the green hydrogen play, which has now been shelved, so they've got a real shortfall here. So they're looking to the town of Placentia. They pay their municipal taxes into the town of Placentia. Placentia's budget is around $7 million. $1.6 million of that comes from the Port of Argentia. So they're looking for a break to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars. Placentia itself says, no, pretty much. I don't want to speak for the mayor, but pretty much said, no, because what if we give you a break? What about all the other businesses who will inevitably say, you're giving the port a break, how about me? So if Scott Penny or someone at the port would like to come on and kind of break this down a little further, a little clearer for us, we certainly appreciate and accept his call, no doubt, this morning. All right. So the cabinet committee that was struck to deal with the aftermath of the Conception Bay North fire, the Kingston fire, they had a tour of the area yesterday. What they saw, don't know. But all I can see when I see the pictures and the videos is devastation. We know that the government did extend the financial support program that was in place, and they had to do that. But some of the big questions about what's next, and some of the other financial supports that had been promised. So you can get into the weeds of who was or was not insured and all those moving parts, but the residents that have been displaced, they've got questions, and we owe them answers, even if it's answers they don't want to hear. Some actual firm understanding about where to next is probably a very good thing. And again, it's always amazing to me that governments, provincially, federally, wherever, can't get it through their heads that an answer is what we need. It doesn't necessarily going to be the answer I want, or those residents out there want, or any resident in the province wants, but the silence is worse. You can get over the bad news answer, but you can't get over the no answers. Anyway, you want to take it on? Let's go. Hearing a ton about people's power bills. I get it. I got a power bill that's gone up this year or this month as well. So the conversation then, I guess, becomes, is the province going to move towards removing the provincial portion of the HST? Number one. And if so, should that only be done, say, for instance, during the winter months? And then, if indeed that's going to be a play, should it not be means tested? against your income? They're all pretty good questions because we do the same thing for the home heating supplement program. It's means tested. So it can range from $200 to $500 with a family income of up to $150,000 or less. So that's how we apply the home heating supplement program for folks on furnace or stove oil. So is that not also a play we can make with provincial portion of HST on power bills? I got a lot of stuff about that. All right. What's this? Okay. A couple of quick notes in the criminal justice system. It's amazing and pretty sickening to see the Tony Humby story. Of course, all the charges have not been tested in court as of yet, but yesterday he was read his additional charges, already facing 72 charges. Now there's an 8th victim in more charges, and then the human trafficking case. So I would imagine this calendar year we'll see some sort of resolution there. One of the co-accused, Bruce Escott, 13 years in prison. There was a sworn and agreed-upon statement of facts, which I'm told included references to Mr. Humby. So how does that impact it? There's going to be a Jordan implication here, possibly. Then the Marcus Hicks case is, I guess, going to find some sort of end result this year as well, which leads us down the conversation regarding the protection of youth, especially those in vulnerable settings like group homes and what have you. So then, you can talk about the federal legislation regarding bail. What is it called? The Bail and Sentencing Reform Act. It's eventually going to be adjudicated by the Supreme Court. The same thing when Stephen Harper, as Prime Minister, put forward a quote-unquote tough-on-crime bill. So they're talking about reverse onus for violent offenders. So the accused has to prove why they should be released rather than the Crown proving they should be detained. Then they talk about consecutive sentencing, increased penalties, creating a new offense for recruiting kids or youth into criminal activity, then femicide and gender-based violence. So if you kill a woman driven by control or hate, that would be considered first-degree murder. So there's a lot of things there that I think a lot of the country is thinking about and talking about and asking for. Whether or not Bill C-14 makes it through Parliament is one thing. It will inevitably be heard by the Supreme Court of Canada. So we can take on all things crime and criminal justice this morning if you're so inclined. And I was browbeat by a few emailers regarding my comments about the gun buyback program. In summary, I basically said, I don't think it's going to work. For a few reasons. We have no earthly idea how much it's going to cost. And in Cape Breton, where they kicked it off, they were anticipating some 200 firearms to be turned over. 25 came in the door, right? So it didn't work there. And the ultimate point I think I was trying to make, maybe I didn't do a very good job of it, is for folks possessing a firearm and they're members of the criminal element and they are intending on upsetting public safety, brandishing their firearm during a criminal event or committing a crime, they're not going to walk up and give the cops their gun. So if we're talking about public safety, there are lots of other measures that we can entertain, but I just don't think for the cost and what the end result will be, will the public be any safer as a result of the gun buyback program? I don't think so. There's things we can do, and we should entertain those first, and border security to make sure the American handguns don't make it in the hands of Canadian criminals. That's the starting point for me. So look, I think pragmatic and targeted gun control makes all the sense in the world. But the gun buyback program and the current nature of the 2020 banned firearms list, it just felt like a weird place to start. Because is it going to impact and improve public safety? I'm not so sure. Anyway, how are we doing on the phone, Dave? I got where I wanted to get to this morning, and again, try not to spend too much time looking at American politics, but they're the world superpower. Political discourse in the United States makes its way into Canadian conversations. It makes its way into political discourse in this country. It's hard to turn a blind eye to it, and I was told that I discourage conversation about it. Absolutely not. I mean, what we talk about in this program is 100% up to you, the caller. So there are so many things to try to unpack regarding American politics. It's mind-boggling. And some of it is really dark. But anyway, on a different note, I want to say good morning to Fred Jorgensen, of course, member of the Navigators. Fred's got an aggressive form of lung cancer. So he's unable to work, unable to perform. And so they've created a GoFundMe page for Fred. So we know that every time there's a need to raise some money, we look to the arts community, musicians stand up and they put themselves forward, put their talent on display, raise the much needed funds, and now on this front, and Fred has certainly done that in the past. So if you can go to the GoFundMe page, that would be great. In addition to that, there's a concert coming up on January 16th at JAG. Great place to see a concert. It's going to include Shanneyganock, the Navigators, the Irish Descendants. You can go through JAG to buy a ticket to raise some money to help Fred Jorgensen out. I know Fred a little bit. He's been very gracious with his time, whether we were on Out of the Fog or other fundraisers, and of course, a terrific musician and performer. So January 16th, there's the concert, and the GoFundMe page on the open, it says, Fred Jorgensen needs our help. Please show him you care. So they've got a target goal of $45,000. They're getting there, but they're not there. If you can help, please do. We're on Twitter. We're VOCM Open Line. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back, let's have a wicked show to wrap up the week. That means you're in the queue. Topic, up to you. Don't go away. Welcome back. Let's begin on line number 2. And good morning, Sheila. You're on the air.
Teddy, how are you?
Very well. Thank you. How about you?
I'm good. I'm a little concerned over what's going on with our government.
How so?
I'm sure everyone else. Well, we applied to become a town, I'm going to say 2.5 years ago. We sent in anything and everything that they needed. Didn't hear back from anybody. And then, with Tony Wakin becoming premier, we had hoped that he could do something for us, which he did. He did set up a meeting with Minister Tibbs. We had a visual meeting, a good conversation. But what I'm concerned about, really, is that when I read the article that was posted last evening, I was wondering, like, when they say subsidies, what does that really mean? Does it mean that we need to have so much money in order to become a town? But as a local service, I didn't think that was required.
There's a lot of unanswered questions associated with this story, because I knew that through Rock Cove Mainland we're talking about this potential years ago, but when it was part of a pledge made on the campaign trail, and now some fairly vague references coming from the government as to what's going on and what's next, I'd love to get an update from Chris Tibbs about exactly what the issues are and what's next and what's required of the two communities to see this through.
And that's the thing. That's what our concern is. Like, when we had sent our letter that they requested with all information needed on December the 20th, I think that was. And, like, there was nothing more that we could do or we could send to them. So I don't know. I don't understand what they're looking for. Like, it doesn't make sense to our committee or why they're delaying this on us becoming town.
So, just so I can make sure I understand in full, so your committee does not know what else is required to get over the finish line. As simple as that. You haven't been told you have to provide this information or this financial audited statement or nothing like that. You just are in the dark.
We're in the dark, and it surprised me when I read that article last night, because I thought, okay, we sent the letter in, what they requested, all information, whatever they needed, and didn't hear it back from them. We didn't get anything back. But this report came out last evening, so where is the disconnection? If there is a problem and if there's issues, why didn't Minister Tibbs and his group, like, send us an email or let us know what else there was besides putting out this release?
This is a quote that I'm not 100% sure I understand what it means. So, said the report, this from Minister Tibbs, said the report concluded that the municipality would be financially sustainable, but the government analysis determined there's a lack of certain information that could impact this conclusion. No description of what certain information might be. Your proposed budget may be insufficient to operate a town and will warrant additional conversation as we anticipate or investigate next steps. Okay, so an elaboration on all of those things. Lack of certain information will warrant additional conversation about what? That's all. I mean, I think that's a very fair question.
It is. And we'd like to know the answer.
Yeah,
and,
me too.
You know, when they're talk, like, we had this discussion when we had our virtual meeting, and we heard their concerns, and they thought, okay, we lived in a town already, I assume, because they're thinking that we're going to be plowing private driveways in the wintertime and doing maintenance. But the thing is, where we live in these communities, there's no laneways. that it's all private driveways. So we don't have to do that. And they talk about further industries or construction sites or whatever. But isn't that something that you deal with as you go? Don't you have that opportunity to deal with that if someone decided to come in our community and build an apartment building, for example? Would that be on our committee to fund that, or is it the person who's building it fund it?
Generally speaking, if you become an incorporated municipality, when a developer proposes something like, say, for instance, to use your example, an apartment building, your role then would be permitting and inspections. Their role would be financing and building.
Right. That's not our, no. That's what we explained to the committee when we had the virtual meeting with them. Like, I don't think anybody else, any other communities or towns or cities is going to subsidize a contractor coming in to build himself an apartment building.
Yeah, well, not to split hairs, but there are pots of money out there and some relief from different levels of government to build things like multi-unit buildings, like an apartment building, and that's not a municipal issue. That's more a provincial and a federal issue, but I get where you're coming from.
Yes, because that's true. Really, is true to government. It's not true to town or the city.
Yeah, point taken.
But no, I'm very concerned over this. I don't understand what the delay is. It doesn't make a sense to anybody on our committee. And I'm sure a lot of people out there listening to this can understand that. I'm sure because, you know, at one point, I think, they wanted all local service districts to become towns or incorporate to grow yourself, to grow your community. And now you got to fight in order to get something done.
Yeah, and this is just a process issue. This is not a negotiation. No one's bargaining anything here. We're simply going through a process that's clearly described, and if there's additional information or there's a financial shortcoming that needs to be addressed, then let's just figure it out. Because this is not like an application that went in August and you're hoping to have it done by January. This is a conversation that's been happening for quite a long time.
Very long time.
Yeah.
You know, we did our feasibility studies. Everything was sent in. Like, I don't understand the delay. And then I think about maybe there's an ulterior motive. Maybe there's the reason of not allowing it so that the government has more control over these communities. Because I think back to when Risley wanted to put windmills on the Port-au-Port Peninsula. And it was a big negotiations and all this stuff was going on, and I'm wondering, do we still have our land lease for that purpose, and that's the reason why our government is not allowing this to happen?
I'm not sure that would have much of an impact in reality, because whether it's an LSD or an incorporated municipality, things like Crown land leases and stuff will always be the authority of the province. So I don't think that changes much. And if there's an ulterior motive, that would be a pretty interesting conversation, because if you are standing as an incorporated municipality, that relieves the province from some of the responsibility that they have in the LSDs. So I don't know why they're dragging their feet on this. I know it's a relatively new government, but it was part of the campaign. It was part of the pledges made by the current Premier. So all the people in Mainland and Three Rock Cove are looking for is just exactly what is it that you need. And let's see if we can provide it. And if we can't, then I guess we go back to the drawing board.
Exactly. And you know what? That's all we want. We want to know the reasons behind this, why it's being delayed. What do they mean that we... Basically, when I read it, I was like thinking to myself, like, are they talking about money? Do we not have enough money to be able to be a town? Like, I don't know. It's mind-boggling because you're thinking one thing to the next.
I'll see what kind of information we can get here on the programme, Sheila. I'm not so sure we've spoken to him. Maybe Premier Wakeham immediately on the heels of the election. That was more of an introductory as the Premier kind of conversation. Other than that, I'm not even sure we've had a member of the government on since they were newly elected. But we'll simply try, whether it be via email or get someone on the programme live to answer some questions. We'll see what we can figure out, Sheila.
Yes, and just but when you said Tony, Minister Wakeham, actually after he was elected, he did come out to mainland and he did have a meeting with us when he was premier, and he did tell us that he was going to work steadfastly on this project for us.
Yeah, we'll get an update as best possible, Sheila. I appreciate making time for the show this morning.
Perfect. Thank you, Patty.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, let's get a break in. When we come back, crab. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 1. Good morning, Conway. You're on the air.
Yes, good morning.
Morning.
Phoned in, I guess, with the kick in the guts we got yesterday. And 28 cents for our crab rebate. And it's hard to believe that this is what they come back with when we all know what, I guess, the other province is getting paid. And Newfoundland here, we got, I guess, the largest crab resource. And they can say what they want. We got the better crab. There's no doubt about it. In my mind, I mean, yeah, in some areas the crab's a little bit smaller than it is in other areas, but I mean, they ain't losing money.
And regardless of the crab being small or whatever the case may be, when the meat is sold by the pound, it doesn't matter if the pound came from 2 crab or 3 crab or 4 crab, it's a pound. So I get where you're coming from. So what were you anticipating? Like, I've had some conversations with people that are working directly in the industry, and I was hearing numbers like 50 cents. So what were you thinking was or should be or was going to be?
Boy, I was looking at $1.
Really, hey? Okay, wow. $28,
Well,
28 cents is a long way.
Well, I mean, it ain't that far. I mean, I'm over here in the Gulf, okay? It ain't that far to look to see where Nova Scotia's getting and the Magdalen Islands. I have friends all over there fishing crab. I mean, just put it this way. A couple of years ago, my friends from the Magdalen Islands was coming over here and selling down in the Port and Port-au-Basque area. They were getting paid over $1 more for their crab they were bringing to Newfoundland. And the companies just said, well, boy, we got our contract with you. We ain't got no contract with them. We pay them what they want. But the problem I see is in all of this is who in their right mind is going to go in and make a contract that I'm going to pay you less, and it's up to you, or it's up to me, if I want to pay you more. That's the way our fish is negotiated. The lowest possible price they can pay. They're allowed to pay more, but it's the lowest you can pay.
Yeah, but how would that actually change into the future? Because if I have a contractual relationship with someone for a set price for whatever, doodads or crab, that's the price. But if someone else who I don't have a contract with comes and tries to sell me something, I get to negotiate a price, right?
Yeah, well, this is what I'm saying. But I mean, if me and you was going to go in and make a deal, and you're going to say, well, you can pay me the lowest. The next fella comes along, I'm going to pay him more. There's nothing me and you can do. It's not even sensible the way it is. I mean, it's time for this whole BS got to be stopped, and it got to stop this year. How can we, as a province, as fishermen and the industry, move forward after this? I mean, this money was supposed to be paid out months ago. I don't know. I'm not a mathematician, but I don't think they're going to pay out to the fishermen the interest that they got made on the money that was supposed to be given to us. Like, how can they buy crab in Nova Scotia or PEI or wherever? Because, I mean, all these companies got plants over in the Maritimes and up in Quebec. How can they buy crab over there for over $7 a pound and come back here and say all you're getting is $5.25?
Don't know. But wasn't that sort of the reverse case when you guys had that banner season where even the initial price was over $7 and in the Maritimes it was less? I don't even know what the relationship would be between the different provinces, and that's a statement or a question based on ignorance, because I really don't know.
I don't know. We got seven something one year. I don't know what happened over there. I highly doubt that they got less than us, because it really don't. Like I said, these companies, they got plants here, they got plants over there. They can buy crab over there and ship it here, process it, and then ship it back. And then they're going to look up and tell me, or any Newfoundland crab fisherman, or any species that we're fishing, that they can't afford to pay us. If you can afford to buy crab in Nova Scotia, ship it over here to our plants, process it, and then ship it wherever you want, so you're going to tell me you can't. I'm bringing it to the wharf, right to the fish plant, and then you're going to look up and say, well, I got to ship it out, so we can't pay you so much. Like, come on, Biter. Somebody somewhere's got to have a little bit of more common sense than that.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is a question for you or better suited for the union itself, but they talk about a greater transparency, and I'm not really exactly sure what that means. Does that mean that all of the receipts and all of the audited statements from the ASP is in their hands for consideration so they can do their own evaluation? Or I'm not entirely sure what that transparency reference actually means. Basically, because I don't work in the industry, so I'm not really sure how I would know. But Dwan Street or Jamie Baker or whoever is welcome to come on the program with their perspective on it. Maybe help us break down the evaluation process and what work they may have done and what they were anticipating for a rebate. But when I heard 50 cents, I thought, okay, but you're saying $1. So if you thought $1 was coming and 28 cents was the end result, ooh, there's a reason why my email inbox is full.
Boy, $1 was going to be fair. After, the companies takes out, because in Newfoundland we do pay, the companies pays a little bit on a few things for us, and then the mainland, they don't pay it.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, but when you're talking $2, you're going to end up with $5.25, and down in Nova Scotia and the Magdalen Islands and that, they're got over $7.
Understood.
I mean, up to $7.50. I mean, and I heard more. Like, my God, it's time for the provincial government or somebody to make a rule saying that no more money can we give to these parties. Don't matter if the Liberals, the PCs, the NDPs. All this money that's being given to them by companies, and all this here for when they're out doing their going around looking for votes. All this got to stop. All this got to stop, because there's seriously something wrong. There's seriously something wrong when all this was going on, and the fishermen and the people in Newfoundland is losing. Our communities is going to suffer. They're suffering now just for what we got paid compared to everybody else. So, I mean, it's time for the government they need to weep their eyes and see what's going on.
We'll see if we can't get comment from all hands. The minister responsible, the ASP, the union, and of course individual harvesters' voices are always welcome. Conway, appreciate the time. Thanks for doing it.
Thank you.
No problem. Bye-bye. All right, let's break on time again. What? When we come back, Mike Tiller's in the queue, wants to talk about the cost of infrastructure in rural Newfoundland and Labrador, and then a couple of other callers there, and then you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 2. Good morning, Mike Tiller. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you on this beautiful Friday?
Best kind. Thank you. How about you?
Not bad. I was reading the article that you mentioned earlier and listened to Sheila. I think it was Sheila first thing this morning.
Yep.
I think some of the things that they may not be realizing, I mean, it's exactly what she thinks it is. The government doesn't think that their budget is sufficient enough to run their new municipality. And I know she's talking about long driveways and the town will have to plough the driveways, but if I were to guess, I would say that the main road going through their town is probably now being done by Department of Transportation. And once they become a municipality, then Department of Transportation is not going to plough the main road anymore going through their town, because it's not what they do. I don't know if they're on wells or if they have actual a plant or whatnot, because they're talking about expansion, and municipalities don't have to deal with all the costs of an expansion, but if somebody is putting in 2 or 3 houses, then the municipality is responsible to make sure that the water lines are running through there. They have appropriate street lights for their things. So any expansion of the town is certainly going to require more money. So if I were to guess what they think that they can, or what they assume that they would have to pay in fees, is not what the government thinks that their assessed property values or their taxes should be.
That's fair, and but I mean, you know more about it than me as a former mayor, but the word that you use that is the five alarmer for me is guess. We shouldn't be guessing about this stuff.
Nope.
You know, for Sheila or anyone else out there involved with that committee, or just residents of Three Rock, Culver mainland, we shouldn't have to guess about what's next. Like if there's a specific issue regarding a financial shortfall, okay, let's itemize it. Let's see if there's a way to bridge that gap, and if there's not, we have to go back to the drawing board. And if that is the end of the conversation regarding the potential to be an incorporated municipality, so be it.
Exactly, and that's where she's frustrated too. Is everybody is guessing, and again, I don't want to harp on this point, but when you have a government that said before they got in they had all the answers, then I guess it's frustrating when you're not getting the answers that they already had. It's the same thing, you know. We have a local service district that really is next to us, and they're having extreme water issues, more than we have. I mean, their supply is low, and it's very poor quality. They can't even afford to chlorinate it properly. They're a very small town. They may have 150, 200 people. It's a 3 kilometer paved road to get out there. So if they wanted to become an incorporated town, the first thing, well, they'd have to find somebody to plow their 2 or 3 kilometers, and then they'd have to come up with the finances to have a provincially regulated water system. So how can a small town with those costs afford to become a municipality if there's not some kind of regionalization? And that's where I think government did drop the ball. Again, I don't believe in having it crammed down our throats, but there should have been more consultation. There should have been more government money put into regionalization and utilizing other towns to help others, rather than just saying, well, voters don't like it and we don't want to piss off the voters, so we're putting a scrap to it.
Yeah, for me, and I think I have a pretty consistent mindset on this stuff. When we have established processes, it's always going to be a matter of making an application, supplying information. Those who will receive the information will evaluate it, go back to you. We need this, we need that. You supply this, you supply that. If it comes up as a no-go, then that's the end of the process. As opposed to, here's the information. We're told in some vague reference to financial stability, financial certainty, but what that means and the specifics of it and the actual financial shortcomings itself. I mean, the process just shouldn't break this quickly.
No, it shouldn't. And again, if it comes back that it's a no-go, then taxpayers like me and you are still funding a lot of the stuff that goes on in those unincorporated towns. So just to say that, no, we're not going to do it, that doesn't fix the overall problem, because, you know, those poor residents, you know, the residents in the service district that I'm talking about, eventually, you know, the government's going to have to step in and help them out. And the money is like anything, Paddy. I mean, we, as a small town, any small town, the taxes that we pay, you know, we expect the best for it. And where Newfoundland is so vast and so, you know, variously populated in areas, I mean, if your own budget, for example, Paddy, if we go out and we buy a used car, that used car is going to have some issues, but it's going to get us through. If our budget can't afford a Corvette and we go out and do it, then we're going to have issues. And I think Newfoundland in general, and small towns, any town, they got to realize that you got to stop buying the Corvettes. And residents have got to realize that you can't always have the best of the pavement and the best of everything unless you're willing to double, triple, quadruple the taxes that you pay, because our population just can't support it.
100% true. And you know, you mentioned pavement. That story I read this morning about the explosion and the cost nearly doubled over the course of the last 6 years. I mean, for communities large and small to consider road work in the future, what is a bad road today is still going to be a bad road next year unless budgets are increased dramatically. And the only way the budgets get increased dramatically is if the government brings in more revenue. And the unfortunate easy go-to there is taxation, which we're already in a pretty tricky spot regarding the amount of taxes that we pay. So that's going to be a tricky one for even cities as big as St. John's or communities as small as mainland.
Correct. One more quick thing, Paddy. Regards to the crab fishery, that has to get sorted out. I mean, this is January, and we won't know nothing before it's April, it's May, and pots are supposed to be going out. I mean, I know our fish plant had an excellent year this year. They processed 70 million pounds worth of crab. They didn't stop processing cod till into December month. So they had a good year. Fishermen had a good year. But if the fishermen are owed money, it's better for the communities to have that money, even if it's 50 cents a pound. If they're planting on $17 million worth of crab, you're looking at $8 million that's going into small communities. It's a lot better in the hands of the fishers than what it is in the plants' hands. And again, I'm not saying anything bad about the plants. The plants are good to the community, and they're not all bad people, not at all. But
of course not.
The money is better off in the hands of the people that's going to be spending it rather than watching interest grow in their bank accounts.
I have never been involved in that particular piece of business, but I do wonder aloud why it takes so long.
Because it's allowed to happen, Paddy. There's been no... The unions in the past haven't been vocal enough. The governments haven't been willing to step in. Both sides, I'm not pitting them one against the other, but none of them have been willing to say, you know what, this is enough, and we're going to have answers, or there's going to be no crab fishery, and everybody's going to suffer. There's got to be just this foolishness of going in and going up on Confederation Hill, and then you see the opposition out mingling with the fishermen and saying, yeah, we'll do better, and then they fishes, and then the fall comes and there's another issue, and the spring comes, there's another issue. That doesn't happen in any other industry, so why in the name of God does it happen in the fishery every year?
It's an excellent question, because it's every year very similar issues rear their ugly head. Like, there's been some changes, for instance, when last in first out came to pass, out of nowhere, nobody knew what was going on, but thankfully went away. But other changes, is whether they be decisions based on adjacency, whether it be price setting panels, whether it be the processing capacity, every year, same things every single time, and nothing changes. I don't know why. I know it's a pretty convoluted industry no matter how you look at it, but it's remarkable to me that the seasonal issues are the seasonal issues every year.
And even this new buddy up system that was just announced, in one licensing area it's one set of rules, in another licensing area it's another set of rules. None of it makes sense.
If the Fisheries Act was changed to have the guiding principle regarding decisions be adjacency, and we allowed for realistic rules regarding buddy up, realistic rules regarding bycatch, I mean, a lot could change pretty quickly. There's a better way to set prices, I would suggest, versus what we currently do. Maybe even if you use the Erner Barry, like in lobster, and apply that across the board. It seems to me that comes out with maybe a fairer circumstances for both harvester and processor. But anyway, I'm no expert in the fishery, but I certainly hear a lot about it. Mike, anything else quick before I go to the news?
No, not at all, Paddy. Just thank you for your time, and I want to get that out there because, I mean, and again, it's every government, but things had to change. I mean, we have to look at doing ways better, cheaper ways, whether it's the recycling of tires for asphalt, whether it's something has got to be. We got to find ways to do things with less, because if we always want the best all the time, we're not going to be able to afford it unless we have mass immigration, which we know has its own issues. So, we've got to learn to do more with less.
100%. Mike, thanks for the call.
Not a problem, sir. Thank you.
All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And in tire recycling, man, when we were paying that huge fee buying tires, and that was for the repurposing and recycling of tires, of course, with which we were paying people on the mainland to take our tires. Now that we brought tire recycling to the province, and not too far from my studio, does it now mean that maybe we can pay less or nothing on that fee? I guess there's always going to be some sort of fee, but imagine we were paying millions of dollars for someone else to take the tires and recycle it and actually make products. I know a guy living in Ontario who's from this city, and he works for a company that they repurpose tires. They make like paving stones, or you know what I'm getting at. So they've made money after we paid them to take our tires. It was always mind-boggling to me. Let's get a break, and when we come back, Margaret, you stay right there to talk about the president and resources. Andrews and Buer with an update on a town issue, a dispute with the town of Marystown. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 3. Margaret, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy.
Good morning.
Paddy, the senior 65 and older are supposed to get $300 from the government this month. Is that the federal or the provincial government? And do you know when the issue date is supposed to be?
So if we're talking about the seniors benefits money, that was supposed to come out with the GST on the 5th of January. I've heard conflicting reports of people got it. Some people got it and some people didn't. So if that's what you're referring to, that's the quarterly GST dates.
Oh, okay. Okay, no, because my husband never got it, and I was wondering what was going on. And President Trump, boy, he's quite the character. People have been wondering what he's after, what he's up to. And sure he knows what he's after. He's after the resources. you know, he just arrested that man overseas and his wife, and from that country he wants the oil that's over there.
Well, you know, in the beginning, the message was it was to restore democracy and to protect the Venezuelan people from the oppression of the Maduro government. And immediately afterwards, he said it out loud himself. This is not me and you making it up. He's immediately started talking about the oil. They've actually seized some Venezuelan oil, and they're not even going to sell it and bring the money into the American Treasury. They're going to put it in offshore banks. I mean, there's just so much bizarre attached to this.
Yeah. Hey, and I don't know, but the world's in some state, and I don't know what's going on with all them leaders. But they're I don't think they know what they're doing. They're crazy. Anyway, thank you, Patty. Have a nice day.
The very same to you, Margaret. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, I mean, you know, what did George Carlin say? Of course, infamous, famous comedian. George Carlin said, America is an oil company with an army. And there's a lot of truth to that. You know, we can't be so naive to pretend that this is all about restoring democracy and protecting the Venezuelan people and all the rest of it. Seems pretty clear, and don't take it from me, you can take it directly from the president. Let's go to line number 5. Andrew, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you today?
Not too bad at all. How about you?
Not doing too bad. I'm just calling with an update now. I don't know if you remember me calling there before the new year, before you went on your Christmas break there, about had going on in the town of Marystown Council building.
I remember. Yep, go ahead.
So after I spoke on the air, a couple other people called in there, told me, the steps to take. I believe it was somebody from Municipality Association. So I made a few calls from the numbers that I got, and basically what I was told is that they set the rules for the municipalities, and it's up to the municipalities to govern themselves. So now I'll give you a quick reminder of what went on there. I was left a piece of property from my grandparents back in 23. I had put a lot of money into the property, renovated the whole place, groundwork done there. My grandparents, over the years, I guess, ran into some troubles. They owed $15,000 plus back taxes there, which I paid off full and clear. And what I was looking for was a receipt with my name on it. They wouldn't change the property over into my name, and they kept requesting different things like the survey, and they wanted proof that the will and stuff like that. But I had already had the will probated through the courts, and they take the will. Right? They take the will. I suppose you could go back to the lawyers and get a copy, but so anyway, I went to the Registry of Deeds with all my documentation. The government of Newfoundland put the property into my name back in 24, and for some reason the town kept putting it off, and I brought in all the stuff they were requesting. And then the lady changed positions who was looking after this. And when I went in a couple months later looking for an update, could I get it changed over into my name? I had to start bringing all this information in again. They wanted Registry of Deeds again. They wanted, copies of the survey, which I brought back to them again. And this was up to back July past. Just so happened our current mayor was in getting some personal stuff done with land as well, and I explained to him before, this was even before he was elected mayor, that this was going on. And, he gave me a couple avenues to take or what have you. And but we'll fast forward to December the 4th when I went into the office. This paperwork was supposed to be ready. I was contacted the week before and told to be ready. And on Thursday, I didn't get a chance to get in until the following Monday, or maybe it was a Tuesday, December the 4th, regardless. And I went in and sat down with the town manager, and I said, I'm here to pick up this paperwork. And, I guess they're basically sick of seeing me coming in, Patty, looking for this paperwork over periods of months and months and into years. He said, he got up from his desk. He said, "What do you want? What do you want?" And I said, "I want a receipt with my name on it and saying that this property is in my name because I need to get an appraisal done." And I said, "I was told it's ready." I said, I did say, you're really trying me patience. You told me it's ready. Now I'm here." He grabbed the corner of my chair, the handle of my chair, Patty, and he said, "You get the F out of my office," he said, "before I trolls you out." And he said, "We'll call you when your paper's good and God, ready." And I said, "Well," and Patty, I don't scare easy, but I really did think at that point that if I didn't get up and leave, he was going to attempt to troll me at the office.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like I'm going to scratch my scalp right off my head. Some things just simply should not be this difficult.
Patty, I don't mean to cut you off. Now, I want to tell you a little bit more about what happened since. I went in, I requested a code of conduct because that's what I was told to do by the gentleman I was speaking to, what I believe was MAA. I went in, requested that on 12th of December. Actually, it was a Friday, so it was a little earlier than that. But they had a council meeting on December the 16th, and somebody had brought it to my attention. I didn't watch it. They said, if I was you, I'd go and listen to the last 2 minutes of this December 16th council meeting. So when I did, watched it through, got to the end of it, and our mayor got up and said, there was an incident in our town hall. Our town manager, they state his name in the video, so I won't say anything, but if anybody wants to go watch it, it's December 16th, Marystown Town Council Live, the last 2 minutes. And they say Mr. So-and-so said he swore in the office. And he came to council, and he notified us that he swore in the office. And council has accepted his apology and will not be pursuing this any further. Now, Patty, they tied me hands and basically made it so that the code of conduct that I was reading through and getting ready to put in a written formal complaint about this. Normally, I'd let something like this, something go if somebody was having a bad day or whatever. But when I got relatives of all sorts, young and old, going to be going into that building, and this fella got a temper problem, and it's obvious that he can't control it the way he lost his, nugget on me. And basically, I just want to let everyone know what happened here, and that the council didn't hear the whole story because I didn't get a chance to put in my complaint on the code of conduct, which the following are termed or what he breached, and there is abuse of authority, a public official using their position to intimidate or threaten someone, verbal abuse or verbal harassment, swearing in an aggressive language directly at you, intimidation, especially if the statement "before I throw you out" was meant in a threat, misconduct in a public office, an administration or disciplinary term often used when a public official acts outside acceptable standards, threatening behavior, violation of procedural fairness. I could go on, but I never got a chance to put in this complaint. Those are just some of the ones that I got to before I kind of give up on it, because I'll not give up on it, no, but I took the time over Christmas. I had to put that aside and celebrate and enjoy Christmas and everything else. But I just want to let the council know that I'm not satisfied with him apologizing to them. They're not the ones that he flipped out at and told, to get out of town office where I'm supposed to be able to conduct any business. that I got going on there with the town.
Yeah, I mean, you're the one who owed the apology. I suppose you should apologize to all hands.
Well, yeah, and I mean, from what I've seen, I've been around enough to know, Paddy, I'm in the workforce since I'm 18 years old. I've been from the fellow pick and shovel to, you know, the guy that's running some jobs. And from what I've seen, that type of attitude don't stand out anywhere. And, you know, if not at least some type of mandatory anger management or something, not just say this is as far as we're taking it and we're not letting you put in your complaint, basically, is what they done to me. Hey.
Oh my. Andrew, anything else quick, because I'm late for the break, but I appreciate your time.
No, I appreciate your time, Paddy, and just let everybody know that, you know, if you goes in there and you feels that it's not adequate work being done, don't be shy to let somebody know.
Fair ball. Thanks for the call this morning, Andrew. Keep in touch.
Thank you very much, Paddy. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Bye-bye. All right, let's get a break in here. When we come back, there's a caller in the queue with more crab talk, and then we're talking hospital beds, John Risley, whatever you want to talk about. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go. Line number 2, Charlie, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy.
Morning.
Has the dog finished training you yet?
He's almost there.
Yeah, okay. Paddy, you mentioned George Carlin. I think if I remember this right, one of his statements was, he said he hadn't seen a problem yet that can't be solved when Americans roll up their sleeves and ignore it. I thought that was kind of appropriate.
Pretty on point.
Yeah. Just want to mention a few things locally. That Risley thing sounds very much like a pipe dream, like the other project was. I don't think. How can you guarantee good markets, good price from the States when they're not really getting away from shale oil and so on, and coal as well? So I don't know who he hopes to sell that to, and I can't see that amount of power being available, and I can't see investors ever at this stage wanting to get involved with that. So I think they just like to throw out visions there to keep themselves in the news. That's my opinion of it.
That could be part of it. Now, there is a thirst for power in the United States. We know that to be true. And, you know, the reference to the federal government talking about green energy being a hoax or whatever the case may be. But still, some of the states, they're happy enough to buy the power if it meets their actual affordability target. But the problem there is, if the closest market is in the northeastern United States, which obviously it is, there's an issue regarding the state's rights to shoot down transmission projects like they did in the state of Maine. So I don't know where the market would be, but it's fascinating to me that there's a specific mention of Hydro-Quebec. Now, Hydro-Quebec already has access to markets in the states. They've got a bunch of contracts in the United States. So I guess that would be their conduit, but this very much feels like a pipe dream, and I'll add this to it. So when hydrogen was all the rage for some reason, and it might be part of the alternative fuels into the future, it was basically driven by the federal government. If you dangle grant money, if you dangle tax relief, if you dangle subsidies, individuals and businesses are going to chase it. There's nothing quite like cheap money coming from the feds.
No. Well, okay, we'll leave that one. I don't think it's going anywhere.
Unlikely.
Regarding hospital beds, do you know how many hospital beds are taken up in Newfoundland, or have you heard a figure with people, they should be in hospice facilities, but they take up beds? I know of a couple, but does that mean, I wonder, are they exceptions, or is that the rule, that people are taking out beds who have no chance of recovery?
I don't know if there's a specific number, and plus that would be a moving target. That probably would change every single day for a variety of reasons. But I've said this in the past, and I think it's pretty accurate, is if we get it right in long-term care, then that's going to do a lot to free up the system in the hospitals. Because we know for a fact that there are people that should not be in the hospital. They are medically ready to be discharged, but there's no spot for them. So whether it be hospice care, long-term care, whatever the case may be, so I'm sure there are plenty of beds occupied by someone that does not need to be in the hospital.
Well, I think we should move on that because with all the demand, what's more important? People coming in, younger people too, than people just sitting there. Most of these people, if they had a choice, they would say do what they do with. Even animals. Please take me out of this. But anyway, if relatives want to keep them there like that, they should be required to either finance it or arrange hospice care on their own. Just because they want people to stay alive. When there's no quality of life there, I think the other thing of need takes precedent over that. But anyway, that's a hot topic or a controversial topic. I'll leave it at that.
It still remains the province's responsibility, though. But on that front, look, there's also people in hospital beds that have an issue with their heart, and they're waiting in a hospital bed for a dye test, waiting to go to the cath lab in St. John's. You know, there's some people who have, of course, been sent home and they're on the list for cardiac procedures, what have you. But if it's been deemed medically important to keep you in hospital because of your pending heart condition, because you need a dye test, I mean, that's another example of a bed being occupied. We know that to be true because at one point there was a fella in a bed in Corner Brook in the hospital. All they were waiting for was a dye test. That's it. And so when we built a new hospital out in Corner Brook, all the rage about radiology and what have you, which I understand, but for not the additional of just a second cath lab in the province, I never understood why that didn't make sense. Anyway.
Yeah, those are different cases. I agree with that. They would have to stay there unless something else can be arranged. The other thing I want to mention, the power bills. How much has the Muskrat Falls contributed to rising power bills and so on? Is that a factor, do you think?
I suppose, yes. And we haven't even felt the full brunt of Muskrat power bills because even up until 2030, there's going to be billions of dollars spent to control our rates with an annual increase of 2.25%. So the short answer is yes, there is an implication regarding Muskrat, of course.
Well, I guess for some people, it wouldn't apply to many. We're going to have to go back to what we used to with food. Start growing our own food, and for heat, power bills, turn off the power in the nighttime and snuggle up and turn it on early in the morning. Perhaps we're going to have to be more proactive with the old solutions. Anyway, leave it at that.
Yeah, but that conversation, I think, is an interesting one. For starters, if people do what they want with their own money, but installing like some electric support, like mini splits and heat pumps and stuff, has been really positive for those who have done it. Cost recovery in our house was less than 3 years to save a bit on our power bills. And the concept of shutting down the heat and then warming it up again in the morning, or if you leave for the weekend and shut down the heat, it's been proven time and time again that because your home has to work so much harder to get the heat back into the home, it actually ends up costing you more. You think when you shut the power down, you're going to save some money. But if you eventually got to reheat it, then it comes at a cost, a significant cost.
Well, I would disagree with you in part. When, using our own example, getting up about 7 o'clock, you put it on 16. By the time you get up at 8, the chill has gone off. You can then, of course, put it up to 20. So with heat pumps, I find they a lot better than electric heaters in warming up the place very quickly. Anyway, that's been our experience.
Yeah, in our home,
leave that.
If I get up in the morning and I go into the kitchen living room area, if I put on the mini split, in 2 minutes you can feel the heat. 2 minutes.
That's right.
It's amazing, really.
So it's not the same as the electric, the baseboard heaters. Regarding the Trump thing, taking over Venezuela, Scott Peck said things are over-determined. We look for one reason. There's usually a bunch of reasons. One is definitely to satisfy his buddies in the oil companies who finance his election bids. They claim they're owed billions of dollars there, and I'm sure that's a factor there. They've also got heavy oil that U.S. refineries need, because we often think, why the heck are they importing oil if they have enough themselves? But it's because of their type of refineries that they have. They have to sell a lot of this sweet oil elsewhere. And the other factor is Cuba, I believe. We don't quite get into that enough. by cutting off Cuba's oil supply, energy supply, they're hoping to topple that regime, and that would serve Trump very well and the Republican Party for decades in Florida, where they need the Cuban vote. I mean, that's one state that determines presidential elections, like it did for Bush. And if he could accomplish that through encouragement that he gets from Rubio, that would be a big feather in his hat. That he would have taken down the regime there. I think that should be looked at, and I think they're going to push that. But anyway, do you want to comment on that?
Sure. For starters, the United States is a net exporter, so they don't need the oil themselves. Right? And there's a reason why they import the kinds of oils that they do, and you're right to say the refineries are set up that particular way, but they're a net exporter. It's control. It's just control of resources. I mean, they're making bank on Venezuelan oil, and they will continue to do so in the future. People tell me, look, the Venezuelans are cheering, and there's political prisoners being released. All true. All very true. But what is not in place is any sort of plan for the future. None. I mean, you take out Maduro, you put in his vice president, not the lady Machado, who actually won the last election. Why? Because for some reason we're trusting the Oval Office to say, well, the people, she doesn't have the respect of the people. She just won the election, so she's got the respect of the majority of people. And now he said yesterday that when he welcomes her to the White House, he's pretty sure that she's going to hand over her Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, the belly aching and the piss and the moaning about that award is unbelievable.
Yeah, there's one other factor. The Chinese are owed billions of dollars. They've been supplying Venezuela. Venezuela's been supplying oil to them to pay for the $1 billion loans they have.
Sure.
How the Chinese are going to get their money back? That's another factor that probably they haven't looked at yet. But no anyway, just a point on Vance. He was talking this morning about the protesters, the great protesters in Iran that they would stick up for, and they're warning them not to shoot them and so on. And the protesters in the United States, they're fair game. They're all leftists. They're all terrorists. Can you believe the irony in that, But anyway.
Yeah, that whole, everything that's going on in Minneapolis, and again, I get far too many emails that are just so dark about those types of things. It's basically a comply or die message coming. And even after that, yesterday afternoon, there was another ICE officer had drawn his gun and pointed at another protester. Like, even if they are obstructing or whatever they're doing, or if they're cursing at them or they're harassing them, the only solution isn't death. Like, it's just remarkable to me. Then there was a video going around of, I mean, it just feels like retaliation. Teenagers stand on the sidewalk, the ICE vehicle comes to pass him, buddy in the passenger side, just out the window with the pepper spray. Got him in the face on a drive-by.
Well, they have absolute immunity, so they can do what they like now. That's the message. Patty, I'd like to end with a book recommendation. Tim Alberta, he's a pastor's son, Southern Baptist. The Kingdom, the Power, and the Glory. And he explains what happened, why many of the evangelicals flocked to Trump, and why they're staying with him. And it's a great read. I finally understand what the hell is going on there, because a lot of Newfoundlanders are coming back converts to that kind of message and are pro-Trumpers even after his economic war on Canada. But anyway, it's a great read.
Thank you, Charlie. Mass is over. Go in peace.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
All the best. Bye-bye. All right, you stay right there, caller, to talk about crab, and then we're speaking with you. Don't go away. Welcome back. Let's go. Line number 1. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. Happy New Year to you.
Same to you.
I was probably a little late. It's the 9th, but nevertheless. Just calling about the fishery stuff. Of course, the public must be getting sick of hearing this stuff. It seems to be record on repeat every year. Same stories, different twist. Believe me, no one's more sick of all of this than the fish harvesters themselves, first of all. But I heard your call there earlier, and I just wanted to, I guess, educate the public a little bit as to what's going on. I've been involved in different committees with the union and DFO and things in the past, and I've come to learn a few things about processes and procedures. First off, hats off to the new union. They are extraordinary at what they're doing. But the problem, is the legislative layout of our industry. The union is not limitless, but very powerless when it comes to being able to effectively fight after and argue points on behalf of the harvesters. One of the big things I've come to learn is the fisheries industry in Newfoundland and Labrador in itself is exempt from the Federal Competition Act. What that means is basically it's a situation that's ripe to grow corruption, to empower the already powerful people, and we're going back 100 years in this fishery now with regards to pay the fish harvester enough just to keep them shut up. No elected member, and by the way, I'm not calling specifically about crab because I don't fish much crab. I'm from 3PS. We don't get much crab. Our primary fishery is lobster. And a point you made there on a call earlier this morning was in regards to the Urner Barry system. Well, let me tell you and the public right now, and every harvester probably knows this as well, that the ASP is so powerful that they've even found ways to manipulate the Urner Barry system. So, and they can do this because there's been no legislative change ever since the moratorium. The exempt from the Competition Act was to protect plant workers. Well, we don't have plant workers anymore. We have to get them from overseas. So what's their excuse now? Well, these companies allocate millions of dollars in their operating budgets just to employ the lobby, make sure nothing gets changed through the House. This is the crux of the problem. And, it's just a new year, same old problem. I'm looking across the harbor now at a boat that I just recently purchased, and I'm thinking to myself, a young person will be foolish to get involved in this industry as it stands right now, because it's when it comes to rural Newfoundland, away from the northeast coast crab fishery, it's a dying industry, and it's dying so fast. And it all boils back to legislation. And there hasn't been one elected member yet that has come forth or even wants to present in a House or a Parliament or a legislature ideas on how to change legislation. Anything, a house, a car, a fish, a piece of meat, it's worth what somebody else wants to pay for it. And that can only happen in its truest form in an open, competitive market.
I get that. And when I just blurted out Urner Barry, I was just trying to make a reference to there's got to be a better way. That seems to have some semblance of better. Obviously not perfect. If it can be manipulated, then of course it's the furthest thing from ideal or perfect. When you talk about legislation, and we'll get into the free market here in a second, sometimes it really does feel like not only is the fishery kind of convoluted and complicated, and all the different regions have certain different sets of rules, sometimes it feels to me that those who could potentially be amending legislation or proposing legislation maybe don't have a good enough grasp on the industry itself to make meaningful change.
Absolutely. Out here in our district, over the last, I don't know how many years, the only one who seems to be getting a firm understanding but is still getting stonewalled in Ottawa would be Clifford Small. He does. I've had many chats with him. He does understand the plight on each coast of our island and the obstacles faced. One thing always creeps up in my mind in one meeting with some higher-up DFO managers. We were talking about a particular fishery, and they said, we were all sort of in agreement on this legislation or this regulation doesn't make sense. Then they were like, but do you realize how hard it is to change legislation? And I said, well, with that attitude, it's going to be very hard. But it's legislation. It's not set in stone criminal code law. It can be modified. It can be amended. We're still working on the same legislation we did 30 years ago. And this industry has turned a full 180 since then. And I don't know, but that, just so the public knows, that the union's doing everything they can. ASB is getting away with everything they can. The crux of it comes down to lack of modern day legislation.
Totally understand. And of course, when I was making reference to legislation, I was more talking about the provincial government responsibility. But of course, you're right. And Clifford Small would know a bit about the industry because he was involved in the industry. So that's a good place to start. Anything else you want to say this morning while we have you, caller?
Yeah, well, just to close it out, I guess,
Okay.
like any market in any real world, there's only one true way to find out a true price on a product, and that is to have complete open and competitive market where whoever wants to pay the highest dollar for a certain species of fish gets the product. Right now, we're still in an industry where we're trying to land product, and processors and buyers are refusing to buy it because they don't want it. You can't sell a codfish on our shore to save your life. Things are still so archaic in so many different ways that it leaves you, like you said earlier about other topics, it's just you scratch your head raw.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to stop the call before we talked free market. I wonder what it would look like, say, if, for instance, you start to land your product regardless of the species, and there was actually an auction at the wharf, what that might mean for the harvester. In addition to that, I wonder what it might mean for the processor. Because, of course, you've got to have both sides of the equation able to be financially viable long-term, not just year over year, but long-term, because there's a lot of investment that goes into your fishing enterprise. A lot of investment goes into a processing plant. So I wonder if anyone's actually taken the opportunity to really try to figure this out. Not what it might look like next year for snow crab, what that might mean for cod or whatever other species, but can both sides exist into the future if indeed there was an auction every day at the wharf? Or you know what I mean by auction.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and there's a lot of sense to that. Right now, every harvester can attest to that we're in a situation where everything is laid out groundwork-wise with regulations and legislations to protect the processor. Nothing's there to protect the harvester. And I look at this guy who just bought an enterprise not too long ago, and he's not old, but he's going to be very old before he gets that paid off with the limited amount of product we have access to. But yes, I do understand there needs to be consideration for both sides.
Yeah, and we don't have time, but even when we talk about processing capacity, with the plant in St. Mary's burnt down, we already had a processing capacity issue, and now it's even further exacerbated. And I haven't heard a peep from the provincial government about expanding the capacity issue. Because when I hear, we're at the end of the crab season, the harvesters are gone at the cod and nowhere to sell it. And so consequently, they don't go at it. And then what? I mean, we're talking about revenue that gets left in the water sometimes. I appreciate you making time for the program this morning. Thanks for doing it.
All right, thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye. All right, let's get a break in. When we come back, we're talking about an awards deadline for an important set of awards. What are they? We'll find out. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Say good morning to Ted Blades with the Newfoundland and Labrador Historic Trust. Morning, Ted. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. I finally get to say this. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Welcome to the program. Thanks for making time.
Since I retired from my old gig, I've taken on this hobble of working with the Historic Trust. We're a small volunteer organization that tries to encourage everyone, governments, businesses, people to let's preserve old buildings rather than tear them down if they're in sad shape. Is there a way to save them, reuse them, adapt them, fix them up? Our built heritage is such an important part of our province, such an important part of what we sell as a tourism industry, that we need to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. And as part of that, we've got the annual Southcott Awards, which the deadline's coming up on Monday, so I thought I'd call in and just remind people about them. We've got 6 categories. Heritage restoration, fixing up old buildings. Design and context, that's a new building that fits into an older landscape. Adaptive reuse, taking an old building and bringing it into a new function, a new form of life. I'll give you an example of that in a second. Tradesperson of the Year and Lifetime Achievement Awards. And so I just wanted to remind people that that's out there. You've got till Monday to send in your application. I'll tell you about how to do that in a second. But a couple of examples of buildings that people here in town might know. Bannerman Brewing used to be a fire station, then a city depot. Now it's a beautiful brewery restaurant. The Parlor, the little cafe up on Military Road across from Bannerman Park, used to be a house. Now it's a business. Those kinds of things. And so I just wanted to let people know about that.
And I'm glad you did. And the Central Fire Station also used to be a lookout for the RNC people buying hash at the cabaret. I think. I should have said that. So the reuse and repurpose is really important. From where I sit, not enough people really give any thought to heritage structures until the 11th hour, when the wrecking ball is about to swing. So even when we talk about these awards and recognizing the tradespeople and repurposing and protecting heritage, there just seems to be a lack of care until it's too late. Because when it's too late, it's not only going to be torn down, but to never be revived, it's also going to be so expensive. So I don't know what the right approach or mindset is and what role the provincial government and or municipalities play, but we've seen a lot of erosion of heritage sites, even in just this city. And when they're lost, they're gone forever.
You nailed it on the head there, Patty. I mean, it's one of the things we're trying to do. We're not trying to save individual buildings because by that point, it's almost too late. We're trying to change the mindset of people to look at that first and foremost. Because, as you say, buildings that have been neglected for years, can they even be saved now? One of the ones that I think of that's in danger right now is the beautiful old CBC radio building down on Duckworth Street. It's been abandoned for 15 years now. It's an empty, wet concrete shell. I don't know if it's too late to save that or not, but that's not the time to think about it. The time to think about it is when you're looking you want to start a new business, you want to try something new. Is there an older building that can be saved? Yes, they can be more expensive. One of the things we're trying to do is encourage governments to look at the tax regime. Is there a tax break you can give to people? Because it will cost a little bit more money sometimes to redo an old building rather than level the site and start from scratch. So the time, as you say, to start thinking about heritage preservation is at the beginning, not at the end. We had a meeting with the government last year, and we said, look, you've got the 2025 tourism guide and map has a beautiful old heritage house on it. You celebrate this, back it up.
Fair enough. Actions and words and where they meet. There's plenty of examples that we can go to, and it'd be a real shame if just I focus on the city of St. John's, I suppose, because that's where I live. And even though historical designations have been given to like downtown Buren and things like that, but Bonavista should not be the exception. It should be the rule. Communities should look like that because they always did look like that. St. John's is becoming a vinyl siding jungle. I mean, you can go to other cities in this country. Ottawa comes to mind. It's got a real historic feel and flair. And yet we pretend we're the oldest city in North America, yet we're losing all of that heritage at the exact same time, and it's happening very quickly.
And I couldn't agree more. But I wanted to mention before I let you go that it's not just about, of course, about St. John's. We're casting a net across the entire province. We've given out awards in Labrador, over in St. George's last year, Fowler House in Brigus. Morton's Harbour, house there won an award. And it doesn't just have to be commercial businesses in old buildings. Many of our awards go to private homeowners who have taken a beautiful old house and brought it back up to snuff with traditional clapboard, wooden windows. We did a workshop last year down on George Street here in the pedestrian mall about how you can, if you've got an older house and you've got old wooden windows, you can actually restore them and get another 100 years out of them. It turns out in the long run to be cheaper than tearing them out and putting vinyl windows in. So there's lots of things to think about. But in the short term, the deadline for the Southcott Awards is coming up midnight on Monday. You can get anyone interested can look at the categories, see if they qualify. There's a form there to fill out, and you can find all that at historictrust.ca.
Yeah, it's a labor of love, but the end result is quite satisfying and gratifying. Did you mention the Dufresnes out in Morton's Harbour?
Yes.
Yeah, that's beautiful what they did with that particular house. I don't know if it's called Osmond House or something, maybe?
Osmond House, yes. They won for adaptive reuse last year. And
Terrific.
the museum out in Torbay, the former, I think it was the former manse out there, has been turned into the town museum. Beautiful job they did out there as well.
Yeah, and I also remember the Colonial Building was part of the awards last year on that front, and of course, terrific stuff. Harbour Grace Courthouse, I know, was also part of it. But it's a real shame, and we talk about preservation, and I think they did a wonderful job with the Colonial Building. It is a crying shame they cut all those big trees down, though, all the same.
Hopefully, maybe they'll grow back. But yeah, I hear you.
Ted, nice to have you on the show. Appreciate your time.
All right, take care.
You too. Bye-bye. All right, let's get a break in for the news. When we come back, we're talking housing and whatever you want to talk about. Talk away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number one. Good morning to Hope Jameson, a housing researcher and consultant, just produced a piece in the Independent called The National Housing Report Misses the Mark on Real Human Impacts in Newfoundland and Labrador. And Hope joins us on one. Hi, Hope. You're on the air.
Good morning. How you doing?
Great today. Thanks. How about you?
Doing well, thank you.
So I remember correctly looking at the illustration right below the headline, and it's given a B+. Walk us through your concerns with this housing report.
Sure. So this is a report from the Missing Middle Initiative, which is located in the University of Ottawa. And they put out this report annually on basically how Canadian provinces are doing on increasing housing supply. Now, first of all, it is okay for us to be all focusing on different parts of this problem. The housing crisis is a big beast, and I think, this missing middle piece is an important part of it. Their focus, though, is very much on deregulation as the approach. And I think we need to be critical of approaches that say, all we need is supply, we need to build a lot of houses. If we build a lot of houses, then the problem goes away. Because it's not that simple, unfortunately. It'd be great if it was, but that will not produce meaningful outcomes for actual human beings. So I think there's a sort of baseline issue that I have with the logic that informs this piece. And then overall, anyone who's looked for housing in this province in the last little while is going to go B+, yes, bye. So I think the grade itself doesn't necessarily align with what people are experiencing on the ground. And there's a few issues that I have with the methodology and some of the lines of thought in here that I think explain that. So, for example, sorry. I'm talking a lot.
No, that's okay. One thing, the politics of it all has played an unfortunate role here. The country just changed its tune on putting a roof over people's head. Now it's all about housing starts as a contribution to the economy and those types of affairs. And then politicians promising to gin up the demand side. Breaks on HST for first-time home buyers, homes valued less than $1 million. It's all very much a feel-good, but the supply issue is the problem here. And what's missed in all of these things, we talk about, the current government says we're going to build 10,000 units over the next 5 years. And when, of course, last year we only had housing starts around 880 between January and October. The high water mark in this province, 2012, where there was 3,800. So, boy, oh boy. What's missing, though, is affordability. My home for resale is worth exactly what someone's willing to pay for it. But when we talk about building new and people being able to afford to get into it, and the general definition is 30% of your income, if you look at what it costs to build per square foot today, hitting that affordability target for rents and or mortgage is going to be the magic trick.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's, I think, one of the really important points that gets missed in the we just have to build a lot of houses conversation is that we need to be targeting our efforts here so that people who can't afford housing now will be able to afford housing, and just focusing on building homes no matter what, homes no matter for whom, isn't going to solve that. There's this idea of filtering, right, that lies at the heart of a lot of this, which is if you build new houses, wealthy people move into new houses, existing houses get cheaper. That doesn't align with the reality. The research doesn't back this up as a thing that actually happens, and when it does happen, it happens really, really slowly. It takes more than a generation for that to happen. So we can't afford to hang our hats on that as the way that we solve this problem.
No, and sometimes, I always try not to have simply a towny focus on things. When we look at housing, it's not a one-size-fits-all. So it's building for different individuals with different life circumstances and in different parts of the province. What might work in St. John's might not work in other parts.
Yeah, and one of my principal issues with the way that this report is framed is they take St. John's and Newfoundland and Labrador as interchangeable, and both on the kind of municipal approval side, which is one of the topics that they cover in this report, and on the actual human beings and their actual circumstances side of things, wildly different contexts. Really, when we're talking about Newfoundland and Labrador, we're talking about the Avalon Peninsula, rural Newfoundland, and then Labrador as three entirely different contexts, and we can't paint all those things with the same brush.
Yeah. So how do we do that? Because when we have national report card stuff, of course, they have the broadest lens, period. So what do we do with this report insofar as to tailor make it for the actual realities here?
Sure. So there's a couple of ways that they come at this that I think are good. So, for example, they look at their home price to income ratio. So their renter calculation is based on national average rents, which is absolutely ridiculous because our median incomes are so far below the national average here. So we have to look at what things actually mean for human people, right? And when we look at national averages, we get nothing useful when it comes to Newfoundland and Labrador. When they're looking at home purchase prices, they're looking at actual sort of index to income. Their income calculation, however, is faulty. But then I think one of the things that is useful when we look at these things is to find the places where their methodology doesn't make sense, look at how we can refine it, and then sort of examine what that means where we are. So how are our prices performing relative to people's incomes? We know based on data from Statistics Canada and CMHC that renter household incomes are down 6% since 2019 and rents are up 33%. So that tells us that there's a big problem there, right? And that's not showing up in this report. So I'm trying to just tell you what is good that we can take away from this report. I'm struggling to. They do make some good points around municipal approval processes, which are mainly relevant in St. John's because that is the largest municipality in the province, of course. And I did a report a couple of years ago, or this was last year, that wasn't about municipal approval processes at all, but it did come up in all of my conversations with folks as a barrier to development. So they note that the city doesn't perform especially well on even simple application. So that is one point that we can take away from this as maybe a thing to work on. They talk about permitted uses, so things that can happen at the staff level in terms of approval as opposed to having to go to a vote of council. There's a big move across the country towards more permitted uses because they do speed up the development process and therefore reduce costs and increase the speed of development. So there's some good points that they make about that on the approval side. I have some trouble with the what they call the anti-harmful policies section, which is that kind of we must deregulate our way to housing supply approach that I mentioned earlier. The trouble is what they term harmful policies are things that actually focus on affordability, right? So things that, for example, require you to build a certain number of affordable units as a part of a larger project. We don't have provincial legislation that permits municipalities to do that. They're not allowed to in this province, so that's why you don't see those policies in place. They don't note that in the report at all, but that is, in fact, the context that we're working in. But I don't think that's a good thing. I think targeting our efforts towards specific affordability levels is actually a critical part of resolving the housing crisis. And so it's just a very different approach from what I think the correct one is.
Yeah, affordability comes in many shapes and forms, though, as well, right? If we're talking renters, it's a conversation that can happen about rent control. I mean, there's lots of to and fro on it. And when we talk about mortgage holders, there's lots of conversations about the mortgage stress test, which is a little bit too much, I would suggest. So coming up with that down payment and trying to satisfy the current mortgage stress test is out of reach for many to get into even what they call a starter home.
Yeah, and one of the challenges we've seen here, especially since the onset of the pandemic, is that we have a lot of folks who are out of province buying up investment properties in Newfoundland and Labrador. Yep. And so when you end up with this sort of disconnect between local incomes and the price of homes, then you end up with a lot of people who can't afford housing, and then you end up with what we've got in the rental market, which is these very rapidly shrinking vacancy rates. So there are knock-on effects across different tenure types of how things stack up in home purchases and in renting.
It might not be a big deal in this province, but Canadian and or American and or Chinese hedge funds buying up a lot of these residential properties has proven to be extremely problematic. We could have dealt with it years ago.
Don't discount that here either, though, Patty, because 40% of our rental market is owned by real estate investment trusts. So, that's not an issue here, right? There are large publicly traded companies that are controlling a large swath of our rental market.
Last one. I don't know if this question makes sense, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So we talk about, building tiny homes or modular homes or traditional single-family detached homes or duplex. But how do we factor in the actual reality regarding the age demographic here? First province in the country with a quarter of the population over 65. We have the largest per capita population of 75 plus. Homes for that age is a different set of circumstances than it is for a new married 30-year-old couple.
Absolutely. Well, and we have seen that the square footage of your average home has ballooned in the last couple of decades, right? So I think there is partly a refocusing on building smaller units, building units that are sort of located close to services that are accessible. We can change our building codes to have more emphasis on accessibility. Some of the funding programs already have a focus that will give you either more money or just like more points on your evaluation if you do go above and beyond the baseline accessibility requirements. And that's smart planning, right? Because all of us are temporarily able-bodied. We will all need some sort of accessibility accommodation in our lives, especially with a population that's aging at the rate that ours is. We need to be mindful of that. So there are ways to come at that, I think, that are really helpful. And, that is, I will say, too, I just said filtering is not a thing, but in some rural areas, there is a dominant line of thought that, if you can solve for seniors who are currently living in homes that are bigger than they need, that they can't afford to heat, that they can't keep up with the maintenance, that then makes space for young families. So I think in rural contexts, there is some merit to focusing in that way. The other thing, you mentioned rent control. We've got folks who are living on fixed incomes in a lot of cases, whose incomes are nowhere near enough to keep up with these increases in the cost of living. And seniors, especially who rent, are finding themselves at risk of homelessness just because we don't have a cap on how much their rent can go up, right? Whereas their income does not increase in the same way. So I think it's really important for us to be thinking about, how do we keep people in their current housing and prevent further issues from arising with like folks who are currently housed. And that's where things like that kind of regulation come in.
Hope, good to have you on the show. Anything else this morning?
That's all. Thanks so much for having me.
Appreciate your time. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Hope Jameson is a housing researcher and consultant. Okay, we're going to get a break in. When we come back, we're going to be speaking with Scott Penny, who's the CEO at the Port of Argentia. A story in the news about their plans to expand docking facilities at the Port of Argentia might be on hold for a couple of reasons. We'll have that discussion with Scott, and then you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Say good morning to the CEO at the Port of Argentia. That's Scott Penny. And good morning, Scott. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. Thanks for reaching out. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I want to get through this. So there was a pretty big plan to upgrade the docking facilities at the port. Seems to be on hold, to say the very least, for now. First off, describe what the expansion plans were.
Well, the expansion plans were a $90 million investment. We went to tender back over the summer. We've pretty much selected the preferred contractor and are in negotiations around finalizing the fine details of the expansion plans. And in terms of, so that happened in late September. And then as we went through that process, then things started to shift the ground started to shift underneath us when it comes to hydrogen. And the Pattern Argentia Renewables project was a significant piece of capital contribution to that dock because they would be exporting hydrogen. And we were successful in getting $38 million through the National Trade Corridors Fund and also $15 million from the provincial government around the Innovation Business Development Fund. So we had a significant portion, and we had the balance coming in through our royalty and equity stake in the Argentia Renewables project. And with that, as I said, hydrogen evaporating, it's left a gap. So we, as a management team, we've taken the approach, and we've downsized some things. We've really managed our expenses and retuned and refined, where we spend and what we're spending on. and but it's still a big number for a small entity like the Port of Argentia.
And there are different pots of funding too. So when you look at the federal and provincial government, some $53 million, how much is that in jeopardy? Does that have a best before date?
Yeah, so for us to leverage the entire amount, we need to have the project completed by December of 2028.
What's the likelihood of that?
I hope there is a very strong likelihood. If you look at everything, Paddy, that's going on around the world today, if you take the U.S. and the uncertainty that's creating, across the globe. But you also listen to, Prime Minister Carney, even, Premier Wakeham. They talk very regularly around the requirements of ports, right, and how important they are to our ability to diversify trade. And so if we're going to, get in line and we're going to be a leader, and I think the Port of Argentia has been a leader the last 5 years in a lot of different sectors, then the investment into port infrastructure is key and it's critical and needs to happen. Otherwise, again, we as a province could get left behind, and this money could be taken back and end up going into a place like Nova Scotia, could go into a place like Manitoba, who knows. But we need to capitalize on what's given to us and make sure that we execute.
Let's talk about the relationship with the town of Placentia and the amount of taxes you pay there and how that conversation is looking today. The last I saw the mayor, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but basically any tax relief for the Port of Argentia is not forthcoming. What's the relationship like?
The relationship with the town has always been good. I've been here for 5 years. We've had nothing but a strong relationship. There was a tax agreement that was struck here in 2018, and to date, to the end of 2025 on that tax agreement, there's been $7.5 million over that amount of years. So a significant amount of revenue has come from the port, and that's based on an agreement of 20% of gross revenue. Now, as things are moving and capital and revenues are increasing like we've seen, and we've seen the growth, that's all great. But when it comes to you require capital investment, you do need 3 levels of government. And so what we've said to the town is 2 things. One, we need some assistance here. We don't need you to invest, but we need you to look at our tax arrangement. And if we're to go out and borrow to the maximum viability, which is probably around the $15 million range, if we're going to go out and borrow, we need to be able to finance that debt. And in order to finance that debt, we'll probably need, let's just use a round number, maybe $500,000 a year. And that's not something that we're looking for 30 years. That's something that we're looking for in a very short term, so maybe 5 years, to ensure that we do it. So what we're looking at saying to the town is, can you work with us, try to come up with an arrangement on taxation that allows us to give you a significant contribution in taxation, but also allows us to go and borrow the money to at least try to close that gap on the project shortfall.
And so would that also come with a pledge to reinstate the current level of taxation after the expansion is up and running and revenues increase?
We have said to the town that we would certainly sit down and renegotiate once this, one thing about it, Paddy, and I always say this, think of us as like a mall, right? We don't generate significant revenues. What we generate is opportunity. So if we build a new dock, and I'll give you an example, something like defense sector, we're on an old U.S. naval base. Mm-hmm. So you can imagine the attractiveness to that industry when it comes to what could we do there? How could we repurpose Argentia into be a major factor to our defense strategy? You look at Beta Nord. There's going to be some element of Beta Nord coming out of Argentia. You look at, the renewable energy sector. I mean, that descended on Argentia as well. You need dock infrastructure to do that. If those things come here, then what happens is, and it's precipitated by the dock, and it's driven by the dock investment. What that does is that increases the investment in the port, which ultimately ends up in the taxation back to the town, because companies come here and set up shop, and it generates new income, new revenue for the town, which increases their revenues, which then in turn we're able to go back to the original taxation agreement. That's the whole idea here. We're the mall, and we just want to try to get the anchor tenants in, and the anchor tenant here being the dock. The rest will come around and support it.
I thought Pattern had a bit of a different opportunity compared to the other proponents because of no Crown land, at least in phase one. The industry wasn't ever really a thing. It was a vision. And even the potential European markets, they were only talking as a vision as well. And now it's proven to be just way out of reach insofar as cost goes. I'm not trying to assign blame here, but I'm, banking on something that was always going to be a real trick to execute has now come back to not be very helpful to the future of the Port of Argentia. What do you say to that decision to, make plans based on something that was going to be potentially a flight of fancy and consequently has turned into be nothing?
Well, I wouldn't agree with 100% with that, Paddy. I think what you need to look at is that we now have a large company here in Pattern that's committed to the Port of Argentia. They're committed to, as an example, looking at the RFQ as it related to the Newfoundland Labrador Hydro's call for proposals to provide wind energy into the grid. So there is an element of investment that will happen here, right? So that's a portion that will come. If you sit still and you don't take advances and look at opportunities as ways to generate income, the same way we probably would not have gotten $38 million if we didn't have Pattern coming to look and do and export hydrogen. So you got to look at it in totality as opposed to just one line item. We as a port, we would have seen investment. We would have hoped by now that there would have been more advancement on things like the renewable energy, oil and gas investment, even the defense sector. The defense sector is a major opportunity. And we see an opportunity around critical minerals and rare earth processing. So that secondary piece of opportunity, all of those things, there's always in the port world, if we were having this conversation, a year ago, Paddy, nobody was talking about defense and investment in defense. Now there's a significant opportunity. So do we not, go after and try to seize what we can and leverage our land base to get and leverage that investment into the port and ultimately into the Placentia region? And that's where it comes down to. You've got to be aggressive.
No question. I mean, defense opportunities are huge, whether it be the Port of Argentia or Bull Arm or wherever. We have got to make sure we seize upon as much as possible. Scott, final thoughts before I take a break for the news.
Yeah, no, I just wanted, again, we're just trying to find a path forward that's collaborative. There is no acrimonious relationship with the town. We have a very strong relationship with the town. We want to try to find a path forward. We want to be ready, right? The Port of Argentia has been really and truly a gem in the province the last 4 to 5 years. And we don't want to lose that momentum. The federal government sees the value in the port. The province sees the value in the port. And we want to really drive economic development in this region. Utterly, there's a couple of things that came out in the story that I just want to clarify is that when we talked about the finances, and again, I think what didn't get reported on is that, we have offered to the town the ability to do an audit through a CA, et cetera, under NDA. We've offered that. And as well, we want to make sure that we continue to have a very strong and reliable relationship because we do survive. The other big piece, and I'll close on this point, we want to make sure history doesn't repeat itself. The Valet plant, Argentia still to this day is, one of those locations that is a real spot for that. It's too bad it didn't come here. And the gates, as related to the West White Rose extension, that not being here. We don't want to be the third strike here. This is a major $100 million investment opportunity that we cannot let slip through our fingers as a province.
Scott, I appreciate the time. Thanks for doing it.
All the best, Paddy.
You too. Bye-bye. Scott Penny, CEO at the Port of Argentia. Quick verbal response to a tweet. David says, I don't know why we're wasting some time and money on hydrogen when we have so much natural gas offshore just being flared or injected. We should have had a pipeline from offshore to CBS back before Muskrat was thought about. We would be a different province. And he also goes on to say maybe a pipe to Argentia. A couple of things. For starters, we need a royalty structure for natural gas, which we do not have. Secondly, this morning natural gas is trading in US dollars at about $3.35 per MMBTU. That doesn't make a business model off our shores. You know, I've seen reports from years back where it's much more like $5-6 per MMBTU for it actually to be a viable, whether to liquefy it offshore and or to pipe it to shore and then deal with it in that fashion. But yeah, for starters, the province needs to create a royalty regime for gas before we can make even one iota or baby step towards it. Let's get a break in. When we come back, Josh wants to respond to Hope Jameson, and then you. Don't go away.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back to the program. Let's go. Line number 1. Josh, you're on the air.
Good day. How are you, Patty?
Doing fine, thank you. How about you?
Not bad at all, thanks. Patty, you had a caller on there a few moments ago talking about the report that was written with respect to rental units, and she touched on some other particulars about that throughout the province of Newfoundland. It piqued my interest in that it did not talk about, nor did it touch on, the municipal side and the responsibility that municipalities have with respect to social housing. It did somewhat, but it didn't in terms of the way and the method by which municipalities tax rental units. And what I mean by that is an individual that has a single home with a single apartment in that home within the city of Corner Brook, and I'll use Corner Brook specifically because that's where I live and it's what I'm more familiar with, will pay a $450 unit charge for their home and a $450 unit charge for the apartment. They will also pay a $200 water levy, and they will pay a sewer levy for the home and separately again for the apartment. Recently, within the Corner Brook municipal budget, they introduced a levy for the waste management. The levy for the waste management is $150 for the home, and it's $150 for that one unit apartment within that home. You combine all of those costs of the $450, the water levy, the sewer levy, and the new waste management fee that was just introduced, and you're paying approximately $900 per year in additional taxation for that singular apartment. If you couple that with the amount that you have to pay for taxation, whether the fee is 7 mils or whether the tax rate is 10 mils on a $300,000 home, and because you have the apartment, you're paying an additional taxation on that apartment, somewhere in the vicinity of $30,000. So you're paying taxes on the $30,000 value that the apartment represents within the home as well. Total taxation for that would probably be somewhere in the vicinity of $1,200 to $1,400 per year. And I'll use this year as an example because this year is a reassessment year for all municipalities within the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. In Corner Brook, the property roll, or the assessment roll as they refer to it, increased. My property value increased by probably $20,000 to $30,000. So I have to pay the 8 or the 9% mill rate on that $20,000 or $30,000. And this year, the new fee of $150 for the waste management for the apartment and $150 for the home. So the actual increase, while they say there was no tax increase, that's misleading and sleight of hand. The actual increase in taxation for me will represent somewhere around $400 to $500 this year because of the introduction of the waste levy. And I understand the rationale behind it. My point that I'm trying to make, Patty, is in a time when individuals are talking about social housing and providing affordable housing for individuals throughout Newfoundland and Labrador, and I did discuss this with some of the municipal councillors within the city, the amount of levies that are being applied within a taxation formula are making it impossible to rent an apartment for a single family home. The value is not there unless you're going to increase your rental substantially. And that's creating, in my opinion, in looking at it from the outside in, that's creating a significant problem within trying to fill some of that gap of the social housing dilemma within the province. So my question, I guess, to you, in response to your previous caller, did the study look at how the municipal taxation methods are impacting the social housing market throughout Newfoundland and Labrador?
Somewhat. But she does, in her piece in The Independent, talking about the report as it pertains to inclusionary zoning, restrictions on short-term rentals. Also goes on to talk about the municipalities not having legislative authority on a variety of things. She also goes on to talk about the value in lowering the barriers to development, especially when we talk about affordable housing and community housing. But the entire report is fairly lengthy. I'll have to have another look at it, to be honest. But your point is well taken. There are lots of roles that the municipalities play, whether we talk building new units and the length of time for permitting and inspections, and yes, all of the levies that you mentioned are absolutely part of the overall annual cost. No doubt about it. You're right.
But, and Patty, I guess I come from a 16-year municipal councillor role, and I understand the need for taxation. I understand the need for balancing budgets. But what I'm failing to understand and grasp as of late is what I see and I view as a money grab in some areas to balance budgets without looking internally at how they may want to look at balancing budgets. In times where individuals are going through tough times, prices are going through the roof, the only method that an individual has to recover the cost once that taxation is levied is through increasing the taxation or depart from the rental market. And when I say depart from the rental market, if your rental property is costing you $1,400, $1,500, $1,600 per year just on taxation, and then you take that, the income that you receive as well is taxable through Revenue Canada, the value of rental properties within a singular family home is no longer there. And I guess that's what I'd like to see, if there's any information in that study that has looked at that as well.
It's a fair point and well made, Josh. I'll consider it when we talk about affordability into the future. Really appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you very much, Patty. Take
Pleasure.
care.
You too. Bye-bye. All right, final break of the morning and the week. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go. Line number 2, Barry, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. Thanks for taking my call. Happy New Year to you and everybody else.
Happy New Year to you as well.
Patty, today is, as you know, and most of us know, today is the last day for the fill out the online survey for the food fishery consultation meeting. So I'd like to make sure that just get the word out to have everybody make sure you fill it out. And this is our chance. If we don't take advantage of this chance, we may not have another chance for another God knows how long. And it took quite a long time for us to get here. Had we not spoke up to spring, we would never have this consultation meeting or this consultation process now the fall. And there's all kinds of ideas. So what are we looking for? As I said in the past, we want to see the season open daily from Canada Day to Thanksgiving Day, up the limit from 5 fish to 10 fish, and announce the seasons in a more timely fashion. Also to get once and for all, make a stand about the boat limit. You and I both know that there is no such thing as boat limit. The only limit is 5 fish per person per day, and in the boat then it'll be 5 fish per person. Each person in that boat, provided the boat can safely carry that number of people. And Patty, as well, the disabled food fishers forum. That program needs to be revamped to make it more easier to use for the disabled person, and to make sure that it's a more timely fashion. So there's a host of things, and as well with the consultation, we were disappointed that there was no face-to-face meetings, and so with this now online survey, I urge everybody, please fill out the survey, send it in, and as well send in your email comments. About the survey, Patty, as I was filling mine out, and I filled out last night, I'll be honest. It seems that I was being directed or pushed or corralled and into certain corners, and it was subliminal. For instance, do you suggest accept a logbook, and if not, then there may be less fish, or do you accept the logbook and there'll be more fish? So I felt kind of like I was trying to be broad or something, and so. You just want to be careful of that. And anybody who hasn't filled out the survey and needs to fill it out, when you come to those questions, leave them blank and put a comment in at the end of the survey, and say that. The deadline also is today for any other submissions like email that you want to address for the food fishery that's not included in the survey.
Yeah, fair enough. And so where do they find the survey if they're interested?
You can find it on the DFO website. You can find it on the Facebook pages. It's all over the place. It's not hard to find.
No, I know. I just wanted to get it out there.
Yes, of course. Barry.
So when did you say the deadline was, Barry? Sorry?
It's today.
Today. Okay, well then today is the day. If you want to be heard, what's unfortunate sometimes is people talk about the need for consultation, for town halls. It's really unfortunate there's no face-to-face opportunity here, but if you want to be heard, now's your chance. Because far too often people want to be heard, but they don't take the time to go ahead and make their voices known, and in this case through a survey.
Patty, we're at a unique position, a junction in time, I call it, because this has never happened before at DFO as going to put out an online survey, this is that and everything. I will say, Patty, that this would not have happened had we not, and I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about our group, the Food Fishery Partners, had we not kicked up a stink and this and that. So this is why. So I agree with you, Patty. Everybody needs to fill out this survey and make their voice known, because if you don't, then they're going to do what they want to do, and they're going to implement whatever that they want to. And Patty, there's no guarantee that they haven't got that done already.
Yeah, because if there's no voices heard, it'll be 39 days, 5 fish per person, 15 per boat, which is all made up anyway. So I get where you're coming from, Barry. Thanks for making time for the show. I'm going to sneak on one more call.
Patty, as always, it's been a pleasure.
My pleasure. Take care. All right, bye-bye. So for those of you concerned with that issue, DFO website, there's your chance. Let's go to line number 3, talk to Shane Cash about the Atlantic Sports Recreation Weekend. Hi, Shane, you're on the air.
Good to be back. Good to talk to you again, Patty, and Happy New Year. I guess it's not too late to wish you a Happy New Year.
Not at all.
Anyway, all the best to you in 26. Your producer said, what was your title? And I was trying to summarize it, and I think he meant to say, what's your title with the CCB? And I said, I should have said second VP, but who cares about that? But anyway,
fair enough.
So anyway, I'm just second VP. Anyway, I'm happy to do that. So anyway, I've come on here to talk about the games. I know we have a benefit coming up this Sunday with Patty Moran of the Shanganuk. And all of the friends, and we're looking forward to that down at Raleigh's at 3 to 8 p.m. on Sunday, January 11th. And we are using the funds from this to help offset the cost of putting on the Atlantic Sports and Recreation Weekend that will be held here in St. John's, based out of the Capitol Hotel on the Victoria Day weekend. And, we're really excited. We want to see a big turnout for this, and certainly we are very appreciative to Patty and to his friends and some fantastic musicians here for donating their precious time to help us achieve our goals. And let me tell you, a lot of good happens at these games, and a lot of inspiring stories of people who are blind, visually impaired, who didn't think they could do the athletics or different activities, and not only do them, but excel at them. There's a lot of inspiring stories. I personally will invite you to come out sometime when we have the games here in May and just talk to some of the people, or anyone for that matter, want to come out and have a chat. And also, if I also may let you get a word in there, but if you are interested in volunteering for the games, or if you or maybe know someone who could use the benefits of being a member of the CCB, Canadian Council of Blind, the St. John's Royals chapter, formerly E.A. Baker, You can reach out to us as well at CCB St. John's Royals, ROYLES @gmail.com. And certainly we would love to hear from you. And we're always looking for new members and new volunteers.
And hopefully this call helps achieve exactly that. Shane, you've had the last word for the morning and the week. I really appreciate your time. Stay in touch when it comes closer to the event.
Oh, you'll be hearing from me for White Cane Week.
Good man. Look forward to it.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Shane.
Have a good weekend.
You too, pal.
You too. Bye.
All right, bye-bye. Bye. All right, so there you go. Final check-in on the Twitter box. We're VOCM Open Line. You know what to do. Email address openline@vocm.com. And yes, we will indeed pick up this conversation again on Monday morning, right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy weekend. Talk Monday. Bye-bye.